Good morning, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar highlighting the vulnerabilities to PKI and introducing Omlis as a cost-effective and more secure alternative. I'm John Stewart, Chief Commercial Officer for Omlis, and it is my privilege to join you all today and introduce you to your highly experienced panel of presenters, Stefan Rall and Nirmal Misra from Omlis. Omlis brings to market an innovative and agile mobile architecture supporting a highly differentiated and interoperable portfolio of totally secure and massively scalable encryption solutions. Today we are describing one such advanced solution that represents an alternative to the cost and complexity we associate with PKI, that delivers greater control without requiring costly HSMs to store and generate keys, elaborate key generation ceremonies, and intensively manual implementations and maintenance programs. Today's presenters will clearly articulate this compelling alternative. Stefan Rall and Nirmal Misra are Senior Technical Managers at Omlis, and both have been instrumental in developing Omlis and articulating our productized solutions. Stefan has more than 15 years experience with Wincor Nixdorf successfully delivering strategic and secure banking solutions to global market-leading financial institutions. Nirmal has 20 years global experience in mobile telecommunications with extensive experience in product portfolio management and a strong background in secure software engineering. Together they are both responsible for the technical presentation today, explaining our interactive poll, and they look forward to concisely addressing any questions you may have at the summary of this webinar. Thank you all for joining today, and over to you, Stefan.
Thank you, John, for this clear introduction. So in the first part of the webinar, we'll see the major issues that service provider can face when deploying PKI to secure mobile communications. PKI and TLS are well known and have been widely used and deployed over the last decades to bring security to the web. But as you can see on this diagram, these industry standards lead to a quite complex organization and are associated with a security framework, TLS2 today, that still allows some unsecure modes. This kind of infrastructure is clearly not fit for purpose for a world where mobile usage is quickly overtaking traditional ways to connect to the internet. And furthermore, the irresistible rise of IoT, Internet of Things, and the multiplication of platforms is requesting a less complex but stronger security solution. If we look at the situation from a service provider point of view, PKI is a complex mixture of people, processes, software, and hardware. And in this condition, achieving a minimal security level can be very difficult. It implies, for example, to use a hardware security module to manage the encryption keys. It implies also to deploy teams to manage heavy key and certificates life cycles. And finally, it implies to perfectly define the protocol with endpoints and to carefully choose a configuration that will achieve the desired level of security. One of the consequences of this complexity is that the service provider has to completely rely on third-party products and services without any possible control. If the mobile operating system doesn't implement the right TLS mode, for example, then the service provider is at risk. Only recent Android platforms implement SHA-2, the secure hash algorithm, and all the ones still use SHA-1, which is known to be unsecure. If any of the software in the whole chain has a small vulnerability, then the service provider is at risk again. And for example, the Heartbleed breach was present for more than a decade, and nobody knows today if it has been exploited or not. To conclude on the security aspect, we can say that with the increasing amount of endpoints, it becomes really vital for service providers to gain more control on the security of their systems. And it's clear that this won't be possible with traditional PKI solutions. It's now really time to use better solutions to effectively and conveniently protect users' data and privacy. As seen previously, PKI is a very complex thing, and of course this complex technical and organizational structure lead to higher costs for both deployment and operation. Deployment costs are mainly due to expensive hardware, installation and setup, but also to the fact that storing encryption keys implies using secure facilities. And of course, as everything has to be doubled for high availability purposes, the costs are also doubled. Besides deployment, operation costs are also very high, mainly due to staff needed to support the infrastructure. Furthermore, any breach or key compromise will lead to expensive renewal operations. As for security, costs generated by PKI cannot be supported by service providers when deploying applications on an always increasing amount of devices. Again, the industry has to think about simpler and more cost-effective solutions to protect sensitive and personal data. On top of cost and security challenges come the regulatory challenges. As more and more personal data is being sent over untrusted networks, states and regulators have started to define strict limits and rules. One of the most recent examples is a Payment Service Directive, which is currently at its version 2, that is requiring strong authentication for e-commerce transactions. This is making authentication a key focus for everybody in the payment chain, from issuing bank to acquiring bank, and for all stakeholders. And as MasterCard stated in August this year, strong authentication is the way and maybe one of the main way to reduce fraud in online payments. Once again, TLS and PKI look poorly adapted to the increasing need for mutual and strong authentication, and only new ways to address this topic will allow mobile users to use their devices with trust and security. So before going to the second part of the webinar, where Nirmal will present you how Omlis and Omlis technology can solve these issues that we've raised, we want to go through a quick poll just to understand which kind of issue you see with deploying PKI and TLS, and mainly when deploying over mobile devices. So what do you think is a top issue with PKI and TLS? Please take a few minutes to answer to this question. Is that high cost implementation challenges, complex ecosystem, poor security, or maybe all of the above? And I will share the result with you, and then move to the second part. I will give you some more seconds. Okay. So thank you for your answer. I will now quickly, some people are still answering, so I give you 10 more seconds. Okay, thank you very much. I'm now sharing the results, so we can see that almost half of you are seeing all the above issues are as top issues. So it's not really a surprise when we see the complexity of the PKI and TLS infrastructure, when we see how difficult it is to implement and how complex it is. So thanks for your involvement in this poll. I will now hand over to Nirmal for the second part of the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stefan. That was a very insightful look at the state of PKI and TLS security today. Now, having looked at PKI, its complexities, security of TLS, regulatory challenges, and associated costs, we need to look at different environments PKI currently operates in. It is critically imperative that organizations now start to consider looking at more effective and efficient alternatives to PKI and TLS-based security. It was never really designed for these fast-evolving ecosystems that will demand much higher security communications, such as those implemented today with the Internet of Things, the based ecosystems, bring your own device trends, and smart cities and connected cars. For example, in late July, Chrysler announced a formal recall for 1.4 million vehicles after security researchers wirelessly hacked a Jeep, taking over critical functions such as steering, transmission, and brakes. These kind of breaches raises the question, is the security implemented in these environments fit for purpose for today and for the future? In addition to the fast evolving operating environment across other verticals, there is a continued evidence of rapidly changing technology, networks, and security. For example, those shown by 5G networks and software-defined networks. With these environments in mind, the problems previously explored, there is a clear and growing need for a more dynamic system that is less complex, which provides heightened security and meets the extensive demands for today's and tomorrow's environments. What is required is a solution that is compatible with legacy technology, but also designed to work with the ecosystems of the future, whilst providing an exceptional level of security which mitigates the vulnerabilities discussed at a lower cost and reduced complexity. Omlis offers such a solution. Omlis technology wraps authentication and encryption in a single product, reducing deployment and management efforts. What Omlis proposes is a distributed architecture in which the mobile device is empowered to generate the encryption keys to be used. A software secure element is provided and is embedded within the mobile application and is in charge of encrypting the data. And on the server side, a server module called the OMS, Omlis Managed Services, takes care of the decryption of the data. The Omlis solution has no third-party dependencies and enables the service provider to have full control of the entire security infrastructure. Omlis is a less complex and more fluid solution without the need for resource-intensive HSMs. Looking at the Omlis approach in a bit more detail, there are several layers of security on offer. Starting with key generation and management. Our solution does not require the complex key management and infrastructure that is required for PKI. Omlis technology is based on dynamic principles where unique keys are dynamically generated at the point of transaction. We never send the key over the network, and therefore it can never be intercepted by a hacker. Keys are established on demand and never stored on the client or the server side. Keys and authenticators are cycled for every unique transaction, making it impossible for keys to be reused for any other purpose. All these mechanisms, unlike PKI, provide a much higher level of security. In terms of encryption platform, Omlis can adapt to use any proven encryption algorithm due to the modular design structure. And the unique implementation of the protocol adapted has built-in capability not only to manage the key mechanism, but also to provide two-factor authentication and mutual authentication, which prevents man-in-the-middle attacks. Omlis system provides a control and administration portal, which has the capability to blacklist a device if an attempted breach is identified. And finally, the Omlis approach to software development is based on high integrity. The overall objective of high integrity methodology is to develop software without defects and vulnerabilities. To achieve this objective, high integrity relies on two fundamental principles. One, making it difficult to introduce errors in the first place, and two, detecting and removing any errors that do occur as early as possible after introduction. So in summary, high integrity covers all aspects of product development lifecycle, including runtime. It comprises of tools, programming language, and methodology. Using the Ada programming language and Spark toolset brings an additional level of control during the verification phase and during runtime. These additional levels give much more protection against malware. I will now hand back to John Stewart to conclude the webinar.
All Omlis technology and Omlis encryption solutions are designed to deliver immense operational efficiency and are targeted specifically to meet the security, convenience and trust requirements of these vertical sectors. Working instead of or in tandem with a PKI implementation, Omlis offers a genuinely compelling and future-proof answer to the most pressing security question in today's mobile world. Omlis significantly reduces the implementation and deployment costs by 40%. Equally, as a consequence of the reduced complexity and the simplification of the key management, operational costs will be significantly reduced by about 40%. Our route to market today is through a fast-growing network of established world-class partners, specifically market-leading technology integration companies, payment service providers, and secure mobile network operators. Here we highlight some of our trusted and most respected partners. Over the last 2 years, Stratus and IBM have conducted intensive testing and detailed and documented proof of concepts, which Omlis are now fully resourced to implement globally. We're also delighted to announce that from September the 1st, the Omlis Secure Enterprise Messenger is available as an encryption as a service cloud offering on the IBM Marketplace. Thomas Stanford Cybersecurity, our featured partners today, are also successfully introducing Omlis to organizations across Europe where Omlis can deliver the required increased security to support the dramatic growth in mobile commerce. We would now like to give you all an opportunity to ask any questions you may have. Okay, just a few questions have come in, but please raise your questions. So I'll choose this one. How does Omlis manage certificates?
A very good question. Actually, Omlis technology does not require any certificates. We have a secure mutual authentication built into the protocol we have implemented. And comparing that with PKI, we do not need to involve any third-party organizations, such as certificate authorities, which only add more complexity and introduce further vulnerabilities to the process.
Thank you, Daniel. Okay, another question. How do you distribute the encryption keys?
Another good question. Unlike PKI, we do not actually have any distribution keys in the traditional sense. The Omlis technology is designed to empower the mobile device to generate its own unique encryption key. We are moving away from the public and private key exchange mechanism to a less complex architecture, which is more easier to manage.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll pick one more question. What kind of encryption algorithm do you use?
We use a symmetric key-based algorithm. Currently, we have implemented the 3-fish algorithm, which is perfectly adapted for mobile as it is light and very secure. And also it is natively resistant to timing attacks. However, we're also planning to implement the well-established algorithm AES, Advanced Encryption System, and as it's very popular with payment systems.
Okay, thank you all for joining today's webinar. We greatly appreciate the time you have taken to listen to our presentations, and we really hope that you're all motivated to learn more about how Omlis will bring absolute security to our mobile world. We do thank you for the questions, and we will respond to every question with answers, and we're very easy to approach if you want to talk to us directly. As a next step, please either download our recent PKI white paper or listen again to today's webinar, or we can arrange a meeting and a demonstration of our TDK at your offices, our offices, or online.